right, I'd like to welcome everyone to our IEP meeting. Today we are going to be holding a meeting to update James's IEP with the new information that we gained during the testing or assessments that James was given in February, March, and April of this year. So before we get started, I'd like to do some introductions. I am Mrs. Swazakowski, or Mrs. Z as everyone knows me, and I am the special education teacher for the 11th and 12th grade. So we'll start over here with Mrs. Stewart, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Mrs. Stewart. I'm James's mom.
Thank you.
My name is James.
Okay.
I'm the principal, Mrs. Henson.
Yep. Mr. Henson. All right.
I am Mrs. Smith, the English 4 teacher.
All right. So by law, we're required to have a special education teacher, the student and the parent, a local education authority, which is our principal, and a general education teacher. Now, I've also invited our school psychologist, Mrs. Spender, but she was not able to be here today, as well as our gifted facilitator, Mr. Riggs, but he also had another engagement. So if we do have any questions, if the team decides that we would like to ask them questions at another time, we can. Just keep that in mind. The first thing I'd like to do, and I know I've given this to you in previous IEPs, but every time that we meet, I would like to give you this copy of your parents' rights. That is also available on the internet, so you can access it at any time. James, when you turn 18, you will take over parental rights from mom, so you will be in charge of your special education services. Does everyone understand that?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. All right. So, James, I think that you are extremely intelligent and analytical. You have a great sense of humor, and I know you like to play pranks on your friends, peers, and teachers. I'm also very appreciative of your honesty. I know that when I ask you questions, you're always honest, and that you don't have a great tolerance for people who are ignorant. And I discovered when I spoke with you earlier this year that you like to play Kingdom Hearts on your PlayStation when you're not at school. So we did a series of 3 tests. We did some social emotional testing. I administered what's called the structured student interview for Asperger's syndrome, the double interview checklist, and the school assessment rating scale for Asperger's syndrome. There were several concerns in the area of social thinking, including eye contact, failure to acknowledge compliments, tangential answers or answers that just kind of go off to the side, and slow responses. But we've seen a lot of improvement in the area of empathy. However, there's always room for improvement in skills. So those skills were something that we are currently working on at school and will continue to work on. Reading and mathematics we measured using the Woodcock-Johnson 4, which is a norm reference test. This test measured James's abilities against other students his age. And so during this, we studied his academic skills, his broad reading, and his broad mathematics clusters. He had high average in letter word identification and average scores in passage comprehension, sentence reading fluency, and in his overall score range. And I will give you a copy of these charts when we're done, but this is where I'm coming from. I'm looking at, this is his age equivalent, grade equivalent, scaled score classification, and percentile rank. Okay. And percentile rank is where he ranks in relationship to other students his age. So he is higher than 84% of his other students in the high average range. And you can see how he's a little lower here. He's higher than 60%. And so this shows that reading results. Also in math, we did applied problems, calculation, math stats, fluency, and the overall score. Here he was high average and average. And as we looked at this, we were also looking to see whether or not James would qualify for giftedness in addition to his autism.
Okay.
And we noticed that we are in the high average and average here, which really, and I would need the gifted facilitator and the school psychologist to be able to definitively say, but he's just really showing at that high average. Now, when we did his brief achievement results, and that's just taking those tests and putting them in a little different combination, he was high average overall. He did have superior in spelling. You're a very good speller, and that's what we found out.
Very nice.
And so in mathematics, we actually measured this using the STAR math test, and he took it over the course of 6 weeks. He was in the 71st percentile, and here we have his scores over those 6 weeks, and you can see that they were all just relatively the same, really no movement. But that makes sense because during this curriculum-based test, it's a curriculum-based measurement, he wasn't receiving interventions in that area. So
Okay.
this really just tested what he knew. And I do have an area here, statistics, which was identified as an area of weakness. And I have some plans on how we can help him to improve that. Now, bear in mind, though, understand that probability and statistics weakness is actually not a weakness, as his math levels are up.
Okay, that's
So
good.
when we talk about weaknesses, it's all relative. This next one is another way of looking at that same data. This is called an aim line. This is where we would expect him to be if he were progressing. And as we looked at on that bar graph, he just stayed pretty much the same. So as we look at this, we can come up with a couple of strengths. In fact, we have 3 that are listed. You have more than 3 strengths, but I'm going to talk about 3 today, James. Your strengths include your ability to logically and impartially consider solutions and situations, your mathematic and reading skills, which are post-secondary level, 12.9 plus. So we're looking at college level math skills.
Very nice.
And reading skills. And your self-awareness. You know what you need to do. You know a lot about yourself. Now, we do talk about weaknesses, and I don't want you to think that this is something that defines you. This is just an area of weakness. Statistics and probability, which we just talked about, and recognizing others' feelings. And I did see just a little bit of procrastination this year with a lot of things and projects that we have. So I'd like to see us work on that. Now, given that you're a senior and you're getting ready to graduate, we have some short-term goals and some long-term goals. So my short-term goal for you would be for you to be able to recognize other people's feelings in real life, 5 out of 5 trials, as well as improving that math scaled score through the probability and the statistics area. Long-term goals, I would like to have you recognize situations where empathy is appropriate and for you to show an appropriate response in those situations, 5 out of 5 trials. And then finally, beginning now and continuing through life, I would like to see reciprocate in conversations. In other words, when you're talking to someone and they ask you a question, you're able to kind of go back and forth with them. That was a lot of information in a very short amount of time, and I know that we all are busy, but do you have questions?
I feel like you've answered all the questions I have.
Okay.
Same. Yeah, I think you covered everything that
All right.
I could have asked.
James, do you have any questions?
Nope.
All right. Mr. Henson?
Nope, you covered everything.
Okay, thank you. So I would recommend that as you get ready to graduate and turn 18, that you are able to work on the things we've talked about. Continue to work on interactions with others and reciprocate during conversations. And I'd like you to try really hard to know and understand other people's perspectives. Because as you go through life, that communication becomes very important. So I would also just encourage you to work on eye contact. And I know you're a very intelligent young man, so I know that there are a lot of resources out there that you can get in touch with and work with. I would encourage you to ask questions, and if you need anything, to let me know. So we will be meeting again next year, right before you graduate, and I will catch up. Well, actually, not next year. You graduate this week. I will see you at graduation, and then we'll be working on your summary of performance, which is where we go through and we get everything outlined for the future. So,
Awesome.
all right. Well, thank you, and we will go ahead and get to our next meeting. Have a great day.